So how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Um,
So what should we be talking about?
it would be great if you could, tell us a little bit about like your background and how you got started in business and in marketing and brand strategy and all that.
Okay. So I spent the bulk of my career working at advertising and media agencies in New York, and the way I got into that was strangely enough, I was a pre-law major in college, and I thought I was going to go to law school and become an attorney. And because I became a political science major because that was sort of like the track to get to that legal area. So along the way, I took a lot of elective classes in social sciences. And among those, I took some classes in marketing and broadcast advertising and media. And I got really interested in those topics, more interested than I thought I was in becoming an attorney. And I actually had a professor who was actually in the advertising industry, and he was kind of moonlighting as a college professor. I went to school in New York City, so the talent pool there is, pretty incredible. So you got all sorts of professionals from the corporate world that were also teaching classes at the university, and this professor really kind of like struck a chord with me, and I got super interested in advertising and media to the point where I decided not to go to law school, and I kind of followed my passion and really wanted to get into the advertising industry. And I kind of beat the pavement for a while, and there was no LinkedIn back in those days, so it was a little bit different to get a job. Um, but I got my first job at a big kind of world class ad agency, and the rest, as they say, is history. I found like a niche for myself in media strategy and media planning, and rose through the ranks and really spent my entire career doing that. And I worked for some, huge global agencies that had headquarters in New York, and sometimes the headquarters were in Paris or in the UK. But I always worked out of the New York office, which were the US headquarters. I worked on, very large multinational clients, and really, always found it engaging and interesting because if it's always an industry that reinvents itself constantly, by the very nature of the competitiveness of being in advertising and marketing is the constant reinvention and improvement, which I felt was always super interesting, engaging. It never got bored, and that famous saying, if you like what you do, you never work a day in your life. I always felt like that. So that's kind of my story. And what I'm doing now is, I'm doing consulting work, and I find it an opportunity to be very engaged in, my life's work, and at the same time, helping growing companies and entrepreneurs make their way from a marketing perspective. So that's where I am, and that's how I got here.
Is there anything from your like law school days that you think kind of go in parallel with marketing?
Well, I never went to law school. I had hoped to go to law
Oh,
school,
okay, I
but
see.
I kind of like changed my path before I even got out of undergrad.
Yeah.
So I never went that way. Even though I took a lot of classes in college to prepare me for that, I never did it. But I think that the structured thought process is incredibly transferable. And being strategic and thoughtful in what you do, I think, are common traits.
What do you love about like marketing specifically, from like other areas of business? Like, have you thought about other areas of business, or were you kind of like you, you know, made that introduction with marketing and just kind of latched onto it?
I really latched onto marketing because I think marketing is really the engine of all business.
Mhm.
And it doesn't matter what segment or category your business is in. There's some way, somehow, the fuel for that business is going to be marketing oriented. And it always gave me, the springboard um, to jump into all different sorts of businesses because there was a commonality there, a common thread through like a marketing, promotion, advertising lens. Um, and it never got boring because of that. Because I mean, if I were if I were an accountant or I were a statistician or I was into like banking and lending, you get very focused in what you do, and you really don't get an opportunity to put yourself in somebody else's shoes the same way you could from a marketing and advertising perspective. So I felt like it didn't matter what the business was, potentially there could always be a seat at the table for me.
Is there like for marketing, like you talk about how like you're putting yourself in like other people's shoes and stuff like that, and I'm assuming that comes with like can be like empathetic towards like the consumer and stuff like that, having that kind of empathy. Is there any other like personality traits that you've maybe like encountered throughout your years of working that you're like you're gonna make it big in this career, or stuff like that?
Um, Well, I mean, from an empathy perspective, I think when you work with a client, you should always treat that client's business if it were your own, and make decisions that you feel um, are not selfish to your own agenda, but more, to support the endeavors and the objectives of the client. And I think that if you could do that and you could, put aside your own capital gain, your own agenda, and really be true to what you're set out to do, you'll be a success in that business. Um, Sometimes it's difficult because even though we are advisors and consultants that help others make decisions with their money, right? We're still in business to make money ourselves. So sometimes it's hard to kind of like separate that out. But I think if you can separate that out, then you will be successful in this business.
You work in a very like creative field. What inspires you as like a very creative mind?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it's really trying to understand the consumer. And I think that's what it's all about. I mean, call it advertising, marketing, but ultimately it's sales. And it's really trying to understand the consumer, whether their passions are, where they are in their product purchase journey. How can you influence that? Um, what's the proper way to communicate to them? Where, when, how, what, why should you communicate to them? I think those are all of the things that um, are important to be that inspiration. And then I think ultimately the ideas come from any place. It can come from other people you're talking to. It could be talking to consumer focus groups. It could be talking to media vendors. Um, it could come from anywhere. Most importantly, does it resonate with the consumer? Is it in keeping with the product or service that you're trying to put out there? And is it in line with the image that you want to portray yourself to the public?
What's the biggest lesson you've had to learn while being in this business?
The biggest lesson.
Yeah.
Um,
toughest lesson?
I think the biggest lesson is to listen first. Because sometimes you jump to conclusions based on your own preconceived notions and opinions, and they could be deadly wrong. And it's always important to talk to your client, talk to the consumer, um, think about it, talk to others about it, and then respond. That's my biggest advice. Listen first.
Sorry, but my dog is sneezing. So just didn't want to pick that
The
up.
pitfalls of working from home.
Yeah. um where were we? So when you I guess going off of, like lessons you've learned and stuff like that, like since you started in advertising and marketing, up until now, um, like what would you say is like the biggest changes you've seen? Um,
The biggest change has been digital transformation, and it's really changed everything. It's changed the way people consume media. It's changed the way um, marketers engage with prospects. It's changed everything. There's nothing there's no way of communication that hasn't been influenced by digital transformation. And as we know, it's still changing and it's still transforming. And innovation, happens, in a millisecond right now. So I think that is without a doubt the biggest change. And I think it's still evolving, and we nobody knows where this is, what the end game is here, but what we do know is that everything has become much more targeted, much more personal. Um, the consumer's in the driver's seat like never before in terms of access and information for decision making. It's been a wholesale change, not only just in marketing, but in our whole sort of environment, that touches every aspect of our lives have been some way somehow impacted by digital transformation.
what do you predict like in the next 5 years will happen in like the marketing space, or how that whole space will just change in general?
That's a very interesting question. I think ultimately personalization is going to keep getting ratcheted up. Personalization in terms of ultimate choice. Um, you are your own sort of like you master your own destiny. What in terms of what you consume, how you react, how you communicate. Um, we've seen that explosion in terms of video, where the number of choices, the amount of content is just immeasurable today. And I think that continued fragmentation in media is going to proliferate. I think that everything's going to be totally personalized, and it's going to become an incredible challenge for marketers to connect with prospects. An incredible challenge, and I think that um, with the advancement of digital, the way it's fueling targeting right now, I think is going to become, well, it already is, but it's going to escalate in terms of importance, because if there's no way to really fine tune target, then you can't leverage that personalization of media and communication that's evolving every single day. So I think the way to sort of like capture your consumer, and at the same time not be obtrusive about it, because consumers are really savvy today and they know when they're being marketed to. So it's a fine line you walk when you're trying to connect with somebody in a very targeted way and not come off as advertising, marketing, or sales. So I think that's going to continue to be a challenge, and I think that um, the difficulties are just going to accelerate on that, and it's really going to require um, the ultimate combination of mastering technology and creativity in order to win in that kind of environment.
Is there a project that you've worked on that did like unexpectedly well, or the outcome was just, I guess, unexpected?
Um, I wouldn't say unexpected, you know. No, yeah. Well, I mean, sometimes you work on a project and it fulfills the prophecy that you set out, and sometimes that's unexpected. Um, so a few years ago, I was working with um, one of the major mall owners in the United States. And malls are dying left and right if you believe the press. But and they were going through a really rough time, and they were trying the marketing folks at the client were trying to continually justify media investment as a way to um, attribute it to traffic, sales, because I mean ultimately their clients were retailers. So, retailers are giving them, hefty rents every month to have a door in their real estate. And then it was their job to help drive people through the door to fuel that business. So they have a huge task then of connecting the dots so that, there'd be proof positive that advertising and media investment actually did drive traffic through those doors. And at the time, we had a relationship with a company that was in beta test for a proprietary technology that actually did attribution between using different combinations of media and then measuring it on store traffic. So we did sort of a long-term test with them, and we used a combination of um, geo-targeted digital advertising, mobile advertising, out of home, and radio, which were all very locally targeted. And we saw proof positive after about 2 years of testing that we actually did move the needle on store traffic. And we knew that we did because we had like through geofencing and tags at retail locations, we're actually able to measure um, notable increases in store traffic that came on the heels of advertising investment. So that was one of those, like, you know, the prophecy was proven by technology and testing. So was it a big surprise? I don't think so. But the opportunity to become and to get into a situation where you had proof positive evidence that advertising investment actually drove traffic and you could prove it, that was really interesting. And that company actually came out of beta test and was hugely successful. Yeah, it was good to be a part of that. And I always tell people about that because, there's an old saying in advertising. It's just like, I know half of what I spend in advertising is wasteful. I just don't know which half, you know? So that's to me, that's proof positive to say that, we can actually show you that this works.
What made you kind of like bring it back a bit? Like, what made you become a consultant and going off like on your own? rather than with these agencies?
Yeah, I could summarize it in one word, and it's flexibility. You know, the advertising industry is it's not an easy environment to work in, and you really kind of like, I mean, you if you love it, you don't mind, but you really kind of like sell your soul to that business because it's a 24/7 business, and it's really you're always at the whim of a client or subject to corporate politics, or there's always something, and it's great to be in a situation where you're your own boss. You are a master of your own destiny. You could work with clients that inspire you. You can do engaging work, and you can do it at your own will, when you want, from wherever you want. And there's something to be said for that kind of independence.
What are your like yeah, what are your favorite clients to work with, and you know, what does inspire you in a client?
Um, I really like clients that have a genuine appreciation for what we do, um, and respect ideas and opinions, and are willing to take a flyer on something even if it makes them uncomfortable. Um, you know, it's been said that it's not a good idea unless it kind of frightens you. And I'm not saying every solution should frighten you, but you need a client who's willing to take a leap, who's willing to listen to advice, um, become party to a decision, who's open enough to share information to give you an opportunity to do your thing. And it's just to have that kind of appreciation and support. That's really important to me. And also you want somebody who's realistic. You know, you can't have um, Mercedes expectations with a Chevy budget. Doesn't work. And you need to have an open mind.
I guess my last question to you would be what's what advice would you give to I don't know, and like an entrepreneur or anyone starting a business or in small businesses? What advice would you give to them?
Um, be very measured about what you do. Don't shoot from the hip. Um, you know, and don't be afraid to do things even if you don't think you can afford them. You know, um, do things in a measured way. Come up with a realistic budget. Stick to it. Be willing to fail. There's a saying that failure is not an option, and I disagree with that. Failure is always an option as long as you learn from it and grow from it. Um, so I think you have to be willing to take a leap. You have to be smart about what you invest in. Um, be mindful of your return on investment, and know when it's time to beg out if things are not working well, but don't short circuit it before it's due. And just be very reasonable about it. And the last is that if the product or service is not appealing to consumers, no matter what you do in marketing and advertising, you're not going to change that. So you have to be true to yourself. Believe in what you're delivering. Um, Find who is the best consumer for that, and then put it out there in the most creative possible way you can to differentiate yourself, and carve a niche out there. And don't be afraid. And don't be intimidated by technology and digital media and all of the buzzwords that you constantly, hear in our industry. Um, it just ask a lot of questions and you'll understand it. It's not that difficult.
It was great. Thank you. It was very nice talking to you. It was very nice chatting.
Yeah, same here.